to personalize the profession, National Board certification was established by the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards in 1987. By providing an opportunity to reflect on their individual teaching practice and how it impacts students' learning, National Board candidates develop professionally through a rigorous review process, regarded as the finest single professional development program available to teachers. This voluntary advanced teaching certification requires educators to take a deep look into their instructional practices and its impact on student learning. Hundreds of studies have indicated that National Board certified teachers leave a significant mark on their schools and students. Yet fewer than 3% of the nation's teachers have accomplished this level of accreditation. Our National Board certified teachers have not only demonstrated accomplished teaching practice, but by doing so have also demonstrated an overarching dedication to the profession, our students, and to quality instruction. Deer Valley is so committed to this process that the DVUSD National Board Network has been established to provide financial support, candidate support, coaches, and cohorts, as well as an assembly of accomplished teachers helping each other in the pursuit of National Board certification. Teachers, tonight, along with your certificate of recognition from the governing board, our National Board certified teachers will also receive a $500 check from the Deer Valley Education Foundation. Please join me in recognizing the foundation and their executive director, Marie Brennan. The foundation recognizes the rigorous certification process and wants to thank each of these teachers for their tireless effort to not only increase their skills, but also impact student learning in Deer Valley. First up, Shay Ailey has been a teacher since 1985, and she is still learning new things. She's been at Desert Sage since 2001 and has spent a lot of time learning how to use technology over the last few months. She holds a bachelor's degree in elementary ed and a master's in ed leadership from Arizona State University. She also holds a master's degree in elementary education from Northern Arizona. Congratulations to DVUSD's new National Board certified teacher, Shay Ailey. It says 95, so that was just a slip. Congratulations. Liz Keith is a graduate of ASU and will be embarking on her 21st year of teaching this year. She has been part of the kindergarten team at North Terra Canyon for the past 14 years. She found the certification process empowering and that in her planning, she knows what she is doing has a purpose and value for her students. And if it doesn't, she will delve further into the content and find ways to enhance the learning so that it is impactful and meaningful. Congratulations to DVUSD's new National Board certified teacher, Liz Keith. Jessica Carrick is an Arizona State University graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education and special education and is highly qualified in ELA. Her personal goal was to become a national board certified teacher. She has been teaching for 12 years and has been at Sonoran Foothills since it opened in 2015. Congratulations to DVUSD's new national board certified teacher, Jessica Carrick. Kyle Martin has been teaching at Barry Goldwater since 2013 and has a bachelor's degree in secondary education and mathematics from Arizona State University and a Master of Arts in Math Education from Chadron State College. Kyle stated that the national board process is the most effective professional development opportunity that I have taken on. The process allows me to show the efforts I am showing in the classroom is accomplished teaching that impacts my students' learning at a high level. Congratulations to DVUSD's new National Board Certified Teacher, Kyle Martin.
Paparazzi, my friend.
And finally, Patricia Eberhardt began her teaching career in Litchfield Park, teaching 5th grade with a cluster of gifted students. During that time, she completed a gifted endorsement through Northern Arizona University and then moved to the Deer Valley District. She began teaching in the SAGE program at Sunrise before transferring to Sierra Verde in 2001. She helped open Sierra Verde and helped develop the SAGE program. In November 2012, she accomplished national board certification for the first time. Patricia stated, "Through this arduous and iterative process, I expanded and refined my knowledge, content, and pedagogy. This resulted in my ability to provide more powerful teaching that improves my students' achievement." Congratulations to DVUSD's recertified National Board Certified Teacher, Patricia Eberhardt. And after your picture, Patricia, we're going to have you and all the other teachers come up for a group photo. Okay, will all of our National Board Certified teachers come forward?
Everybody just hold on a second. Here we'll do a quick thing while come up. All right, stay there. Stay there.
All right. And one more round of applause for our Sandra Day O'Connor students. This concludes our awards and recognitions for tonight. The regular governing board meeting begins at 7 p.m.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the regular governing board meeting on Tuesday, 11th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:02. Please let the record reflect that Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Ordway, and myself are in person, and Mrs. Reed has joined us by telephone. Mrs. Paperman is absent this evening. If you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
A second? A motion, a second. All in favor of adopting the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. There it is. Did it pop up for you, Mrs. Fisher?
It's here now.
Thank you. Okay. The first order of business this evening is election of the president of the governing board. Do I have a motion?
Would nominate Mrs. O'Brien for president of the governing board.
Is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. We're having some slow technology this evening so that we can vote.
It wasn't just me. I voted.
Okay. Mine just came up. Okay, 4-0. And next on our agenda is election of vice president of the governing board, and I'd like to motion for Mrs. Ordway to be the vice president of the governing board. Is there a
I
second?
second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Please, whoops, sorry. Mrs. Fisher, please explain your vote.
And as a result, 7 young people in my neighborhood were put on a path of destruction. That board ignored fraud, they ignored the needs of those children, and they advanced friends. On the 24th of December, I got a contact from one of the parents that her daughter had died that day. And that leaves 4 of 7 kids. I pray that the other 4 survive. I know one will because she's mine. And I know that you have to forgive others for things that they do and decisions they make, but your governing board matters. And you have to want to have leadership. You have to want to stand for what is occurring. And I'm sorry, but when we reached out to Ms. Ordway and the other board members at that time, we were ignored. We were also ignored by the state superintendent at that time. So I just cannot support Ms. Ordway for any position whatsoever of leadership. So my vote is nay.
Okay, so the motion passes 3-1. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is to appoint the Arizona School Boards Association Legislative Delegate. Do you have a motion?
I would nominate Mrs. Reed.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for Mrs. Reed to be the ASBA Legislative Delegate. Are you good with that, Mrs. Reed?
Yes, I'll accept it.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is to appoint the Arizona School Board Association Delegate Alternate, and I would like to nominate Mrs. Ordway for the Delegate Alternate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are you good with that, Mrs. Ordway?
That works.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any?
For the same reasons, nay.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Reed, did you vote?
I said aye, but it hasn't popped up on my screen to vote digitally.
Okay, thank you. So the motion passes 3-1.
And here it is.
Wonderful. Yes, so we will now move on to district reports. Our first report is our finance reports from Mrs. Mock.
Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, and guests here in person and online. First, we are going to report on our district-wide enrollment for the month ending December. We landed December right before we went on winter break with a 2% increase in student enrollment from the same time last year. And we are still tracking the enrollment compared to our last year prior to COVID, which is 2018, 2019, and we are still seeing a 3.3% decrease in enrollment from our last quote-unquote normal year. But again, we are up 2% from this time last year. Overall, current enrollment as of December 15th was 32,752 students, and I will take any questions on enrollment.
Are there any questions, members?
Just one.
Mrs. Fisher?
Do we see any trends that can identify why we're remaining down? I thought there was more growth in the area.
I think overall I don't know that we've seen any trends or anything that would identify the reason why. I think there are still a lot of folks who are opting to homeschool or have not enrolled in any Arizona schools at all. Last school year, we saw the state as a whole actually had a decrease in students. So it's not that they moved out of Deer Valley and moved to a different school district. It's that they stopped attending school altogether. Perhaps they were being homeschooled, but not necessarily everyone filled out or completed and submitted the homeschool affidavit. But it's a statewide trend, not necessarily just Deer Valley. And we are expecting modest increases next year as well as the vaccine becomes more available for younger age groups and we get back to some sort of semblance of normal in our community. And then, of course, on top of that, the growth that we're seeing in the northern end of the district.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mock. Your next report?
Our next report is the M&O budget report for, again, the month ending December. This is a little different than what we've seen for our past reports. As we've stated previously, we were very hesitant, and we still are, to report any type of potential M&O carry forward. This is a direct result of public K-12 education currently exceeding the aggregate expenditure limit for this current budget year. We have stated previously, this is through no fault of our own. This is through a calculation done at the state level, whereas previously, in years prior to 21-22, that calculation did not include classroom site fund monies. When the legislature reauthorized the classroom site fund last year, it actually was pretty much an oversight to not list it specifically as being excluded from that aggregate expenditure limit. So on top of that, we are the aggregate expenditure limit goes off of prior year enrollment. And as we just discussed, last year's enrollment was down about 5% for the district. And for the state as a whole. So that aggregate expenditure limit is lower than probably what we need, since we're all seeing students come back this year. But on top of that, it includes a fund that was not previously in there. So the state as a whole has exceeded the aggregate expenditure limit by $1.1 billion. And Deer Valley Unified School District portion of that is $36 million, which you can see on the footnote of the M&O budget report. However, legislature started their 2022 session yesterday. They do have until March 1st to authorize school districts to exceed that aggregate expenditure limit. We are expecting them to do so, but we cannot necessarily count those chickens until they hatch. So while we know that we will have some budget balance remaining for salaries from certified and classified groups because of the vacancies that we have at the moment, we are projecting over $6 million in potential carry forward, but that $22 million between what's listed in the committed budget balance and the remaining budget balance, we are holding to very tightly for the next couple months until we see what happens in the legislature. And I will take any questions on the M&O budget report as well.
Any questions? Mrs. Reed?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mock. Our next district report is the Safe and Healthy Schools report. Dr. Zerbach.
Thank you very much, President O'Brien and members of the board, Dr. Finch. I would like to start off the Safe and Healthy Schools report by wishing the board a Happy New Year, and also to the community members that are joining us via the live stream, Happy New Year to them as well. Let's go ahead and get started with our Safe and Healthy Schools report. Here is our agenda for tonight's report. It looks very similar to the agendas that we have used in the past. We'll start out with the community level of transmission metrics. Unfortunately, for this particular report, Maricopa County has not been able to update the case counts that are contained within the specific zip codes that are within district boundaries. And so that is a report that they usually do on a weekly basis, and this blurb was taken directly from the Maricopa County website, and so it stated that they are having some data processing delays, and so they look to resume next week. So the next time that they report this, we will put this in our Safe and Healthy. What the county does have is the EpiCurve data for all cases. So again, the previous slide is when they break it down by zip codes for certain school districts. This one here is all cases in the county. And you can see in the most recent days and most recent 2 weeks that there is a substantial uptick in the number of cases that are in the community. It is well over the high transmission threshold. This next slide contains the age-specific EpiCount curve. Again, the county allows us to dig down and to see age brackets, if you will, or age bands of students. And so we highlight the two brackets or two bands of students that populate 99% of our schools in our student population. And so you can see here too that this one is a week behind the other EPI curve, which was on the previous slide. And so that's why it does not have the 1/9 update, but it too is showing a significant increase in the most recent posting. Okay, that brings me to the DVUSD COVID-19 dashboard. And as I stated in our December governing board meeting, Safe and Healthy Schools report, we would continue to make our numbers transparent to the community. And so this is our most recent one, or a snip from our most recent one. And the number is contained here at the end. So you can see we have our 6-week at a glance, if you got for our cases. And so you can see that our Monday's posting of 505 cases, it is way up from what it has been in previous weeks. However, What I want to go back to again is the epi count data for the county as a whole. And really what we see is a reflection of what's happening in the overall community here in the schools. And so with the quite a bit uptick there, we also have seen that in the schools here this past week. Okay, the impact on operations slide. So this one looks a little different due to some of the changes that we have had with quarantine, the policy that we have in our district. And so you won't see the exact same numbers that we have, or the exact same bullet points that we've shown in the past. But this will give a glimpse as to the first 4 days of operation. Now, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that this has been an extraordinarily challenging start to the calendar year. And so between Jenna's department and mine, we have been working pretty much around the clock with our campuses in order to provide the guidance and support that they need to continue their operations. And so this slide contains really for the first 4 days of school, so the Tuesday through the Friday information. It would have different numbers if it captured what has happened yesterday and today. Obviously, some of these numbers would be higher, but for the purposes of this slide, we have converted approximately about a dozen classrooms to virtual learning. And so that is when the instructor will teach via Zoom to the students for a certain determined period of time during the day. And so this happens now almost 99.9% of the time is when we simply do not have a staff member that can be in person with the students. And so, again, Jenna and her team, they are doing everything they can to deploy who can be there at the schools to keep the schools open for the in-person learning, but there are times that we have needed to convert to this. I also would say to you as governing board members, as well as to the community that's listening, is that for the next 3 weeks, as the statisticians and the public health experts tell us that Omicron will likely continue to surge, that parents should be mentally prepared that there could be a conversion to virtual in that child's particular classroom. And so that is not something that we want to do. We, of course, want to keep our in-person operations going. But if we do not have staff members to make sure that the environment is safe, then that is something that, again, parents should mentally prepare for over the next 3 weeks here. The second bullet point shows the number of classrooms that need alternate staffing. And again, this primarily captures the first 4 days of school. So not all schools are represented here yet. But we see that about 15 to 16 of our schools had to do this 1 to 5 times. And then you can see both the 6 through 10, 11 or more, we had 5 schools each in that category. And that would grow again by the next time that we meet for this report because there have been more yesterday and today. We also see some schools that have had some absences due to COVID with administration, and then 2 schools, although I believe there are more now, again, not to be repetitive, but with yesterday and today, that have had absences with nurses. And this does make it very challenging when personnel are out. But that said, I absolutely want to commend our administrators, our front office staff, our nurses, our teachers, all of our support staff on the campuses, because they really and truly are doing an amazing job given the constraints that they are facing. And so I would hope that folks who interact with the school staff from the community start off by giving them a big thank you for what they are doing, because they really and truly are putting in many hours during the day. I know Jenna is no different with her interactions with the staff than myself, but it is a 5 a.m. start to the day, and it is a late ending as far as providing that guidance to the schools. But we also know how important the in-person opportunities are for the students, and so it's something that I know we are committed to continue doing. Okay, isolation and quarantine updates. Now, this is a tricky slide, I'm going to tell you at the start, because we are back to a situation really at the start of COVID when things started to reopen, where it's a very fluid environment and the guidance is changing. There has been some disagreement within the medical and public health community about the revised CDC guidelines that were announced on December 27th. And of course, we know that not all personnel at public health and in schools were working at that time. And since December 27th, there have already been two guidance revisions. So last week, we updated our nurses and our admins with the most recent guidance that was out at that time, while at the same time keeping in mind that Maricopa County had still not yet, and they still haven't to this date, updated their official guidance. They are providing links to Arizona Department of Health Services as far as their guidance, which again links to CDC. So we updated our safety plan, which I communicated in the board update, with those changes that we announced to the staff members. However, and again, that's why I'm prefacing this and putting lots of caveats, okay, out there, that we did see today that some guidance has been revised. And so not everything on here will necessarily be current next Tuesday. We are going to be listening very carefully to the Maricopa County Department of Public Health Schools webinar this Thursday at 2 p.m., which is their normal time for the webinar. And we are waiting to see how they will align their guidance to the newly announced revisions that have to do with some of the test requirements for both staff and students. And so depending on what they come out with on Thursday, and also depending on how certain they are and if they've crystallized their guidance, since it has not yet been, that will inform Jenna and myself as far as how we will move forward next Tuesday, and if there will even be another delay with any changes to that. So that again is all to say that this is a very fluid environment. So I'll go through some of these bullet points, but folks do need to keep their eyes on the safety plan website for the community. And then through the HR lens with our staff, guidance could change as they're talking through with the HR reps. So if they've heard something perhaps a month ago as far as what to do, there could be updates as far as what they are hearing now. So much so that something they even heard last Monday could have some revisions to it going forward. So when folks sometimes hear that we heard different things, that is possible. It is possible that you did hear different things because, again, the guidance is changing so rapidly with respect to some of the items that are out there. So that's a big caveat to this slide, okay, here. So here's what we're looking at. Nonetheless, the COVID-19 positive isolation protocol has undergone revisions. Most folks are aware of this. It's all over the news, both the print and the television news media. So there is a 10 to 5 days isolation protocol. The piece to that is that for folks who can come back on day 6, because there are some criteria for that, both for the staff and for the students, some of those criterion are common sense criterion. You cannot be having symptoms when you're coming back, tons of symptoms. Your symptoms have to have had resolved at least at some level. You can't have a fever. Those are things that are the same, right, regardless of COVID. We've always had the no fever for 24 hours piece. But what the CDC did tell us, which is going to be adopted by local public health, is that for days 6 through 10, that folks will need to wear a face mask for that. And that is a requirement. That is not a recommended or an optional. It is a must if someone wants to return for days 6 through 10. If someone does not want to wear that mask for days 6 through 10, they can continue through the full 10-day isolation at home if that is what the parent would choose to do so. As for our quarantine, that too has been moved to 5 days instead of 10. This is the one, though, that has been undergoing revisions. And so there were pieces about masks encouraged versus masks required, and there were also pieces about testing when possible or if possible. And so we are waiting to hear what public health will come out with respect to this. Now, that said, an additional layer of the onion for this is the availability of tests. And so if you have seen in the news, there is a shortage of tests that are in the community. for those who have utilized our district COVID-19 testing opportunities in the parking lot. It has been growing in the number of cars that are there each day. And so it is no secret that some of our testing locations are backed up 2, 3, 4, and 5 days for the general community. So that is a factor that we utilize for making some of our guidance requirements for our students. Now, for our staff, we do have test availability for our staff. Jenna and I worked together before the break, and so at this time, we do have the capacity to meet those requirements about required testing for staff members after 5 days. And so Jenna may touch upon that later, or she may not, but those are pieces that are in play for the staff. And again, we will let folks know more how that will work for students. But internally, we do have testing capacity for our staff right now. The next bullet point, again, really just states what I've communicated several times now to you about possible changes. Phases for notification updates. This is an important one for the community to be aware of. If you recall, in our December Safe and Healthy Schools report, we did communicate to you some of the changes that we were going to put into place beginning January 4th about how we notify families, particularly at the high school level. I communicated to you the immense burden that it places on our staff members, our front office staff, our secretaries, our admins, our nurses, that this contact tracing process puts on them. It truly does put barriers in front of them in order to complete other aspects of their job. And because of that, we did come out with some of those changes prior to the break as far as, and then implementing them now. And those changes are helping our high school admin, especially given the additional challenges that are present with a large number of cases right now. And so that has been a positive piece in terms of giving our admins and our nurses and our front office staff some time to accomplish other aspects of their job. What it has not done is changed the situation for our K-8 and our K-6 and our 7-8 schools. And so it is possible that our 7-8 grade levels, so whether that be our middle schools or even our K-8s that have obviously the 7th and 8th grade, it is possible that we would move to a similar close contact framework such as we do at the high schools at these particular locations. I would say that our middle schools, we will for sure move to that perhaps as early as this week. And then our K-8s, I would need some additional dialogue with them, but I would say that at this point I anticipate us moving to that. And part of that is because the dynamics that are at play at the 7th and 8th grade for many of our schools are not too different than what they are for our high schools. Our high schools, certainly the students will go to, and sometimes more classes, but for many of our K-8s, they too are transitioning to 6 different environments throughout the school day. And so that means that that administrator and that nurse have to go through all of those different environments. And on top of that, there are fewer administrators that are at that K-8 campus. Now, there are fewer students, I grant that, but there are also fewer administrators. And so that piece of the notification is something that I anticipate us moving towards for the 7th and 8th grades. And we, of course, would communicate out to our communities through our various mechanisms about these changes as we move forward. And then my last bullet point is really a friendly reminder to the community members that perhaps are joining us for the first time that we do have a safety plan on our Remain in School, Safe and Healthy Schools website, and it's very easy, the URL. It's simply dvusd.org/. And on that plan, you can see our COVID-19 prevention and mitigation plan, and you can also see the various protocols. Now, we likely, once Maricopa County, again, crystallizes their guidance, we likely will simplify some of the protocol information that we have, as it is a bit wordy on our current formatting, and that primarily is drawn from folks needing information for COVID when we were in the initial phases of that. As folks become more and more familiar with it, we are looking to simplify some of that formatting. And so it could look a bit different as we move forward, but that would only be for the purposes of making it even more user-friendly for our community members. Okay, vaccination mini clinics. This has certainly been a topic that many folks are interested in. As I let you know, our 2 clinics that we had, actually we had 3 clinics towards the latter end of the first semester at our elementary schools. And as you know, these clinics were utilized very well by our community. In fact, all of the spots were taken that we had. And so, as we indicated at the last Safe and Healthy Schools, we will look to provide more of these clinics. The next one that we will provide is a partnership with Maricopa County, and that will be this Friday, and that's from 2:30 to 5:30, and that will be at Constitution School. And so you can see that not only will it have the COVID-19 vaccination, it will also have vaccinations for other types of diseases that parents may want to get for their children. These vaccinations are at no cost for the community, so folks should not see that as a barrier or wonder, do I have to pay for that? Again, it's at no cost, so if folks are interested, they should come. Folks do need to wear a mask if they come to this event. This is a requirement from Maricopa County Department of Public Health for this particular event. Specifically for the COVID-19 vaccination, there have been some updates for that as well. And so the general jargon now that is being used, or the lexicon for the vaccine, they are moving away from using words such as fully vaccinated. They're even trying to move away at times from the word booster. And so they are looking to use more and more as we go forward the words up-to-date vaccination or 3-dose series vaccination. And so you will hear that from me more as we move forward, and you will hear that in the community. And so that is one change in terms of the language. And in addition to that, there has been some specific changes to who can now get the 3rd dose for that. And so, or the booster as it has been more commonly known. And so that age ban for those students has now been decreased for those who can get it. And so this particular flyer, we are waiting for their most updated one. It currently lists it as who can get some of the boosters, but now we know that really all of our students are eligible for that 3rd dose once they meet those time requirements for that. And so the time requirements also differ now by the vaccine that you got. So as far as last week, for Pfizer, it used to be 6 months, Moderna 5, and Johnson & Johnson 2. But then this weekend, it was updated. And so now Pfizer is also 5 months, Moderna is 5 months, and Johnson 2. And so again, it is I say that to bring up that things are changing quite rapidly, and the guidance is evolving. But the big point here is that for families that have been considering the COVID vaccination and are looking for those opportunities, but perhaps have not been able to because of either a backup at the local pharmacy, this is something that our families can take advantage of, and there is no cost for this. In addition, after this clinic that we'll do on January 14th, we will likely do additional ones. Those will likely start somewhere in mid-February when we continue additional ones for us. Okay, COVID-19 testing opportunities. So I hinted at this before, lines are getting long for our particular this particular site here at the district office. So we do continue our Tuesdays and Friday opportunities for this. I do encourage folks to continue to take advantage of that, and at the same time, folks should come with an expectation that you will need to wait a little bit to get into that test site. We also have our home test kits, which I have talked about at length in previous Safe and Healthy Schools reports. Again, currently right now, we do have our testing capacity to meet the needs of our staff for that, both with respect to COVID-19 unknowns or folks who are sick but don't yet know if they have COVID. our COVID-19 positive folks, as well as our quarantine folks. So that we are good right now. Our campuses also have a supply of home test kits for those students who are symptomatic. And so we will continue to give them a supply for that. We do not have enough tests just to give to everyone at the school sites. The nurses, we rely on them to be quite judicious with those home test kits for those situations for families who are unable to secure any other type of test. And then our third piece is our pop-up testing. And so we have explored some partnerships with other agencies to help boost the supply for our school population. And so we do believe that we are just about ready to start what we are calling these pop-up testing events. And so our current plan is to offer those at a variety of campuses throughout our district in different locations, so that families would know there would be ones closer to them given the geographic size of our district. And those would occur on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And they could be multiple locations on each day. In other words, there could be 2 to 3 sites on any where we have this pop-up testing. This pop-up testing would likely be anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. It would be a short window, but it would just be for staff and for students in our the particular community. What we have outside on Tuesdays and Fridays is not just for our students nor for our staff. It is for the general community. So folks from the community who look up testing sites, they will see us as an option. These ones that I'm talking about would not be for that. This, again, would just be for our students, and that's why a smaller window of time is appropriate for that. And if we needed to adjust, we could. That said, our schools still, though, do continue to we have athletic events, we have other types of events, and so it has to be done with good planning for the logistics so that we do not create any issues or unsafe situations with traffic. But I do expect those to start occurring sometime next week in our district, and that should be of help to our community as we experience this surge with the Omicron variant. Okay, communication to stakeholders. Again, with our parent and community population, we did send out multiple parent communications before our students and staff went to the winter recess. And then in our winter recess, we had multiple communications that went out to our parent population regarding expectations for when we are coming back. And most recently, we had a conversation with our interfaith partners who have outreach with their voice. As we know, many of our community members are quite active in their local church. And so we explained to them what we are doing with respect to COVID so they can help support with the messaging. And then with our staff, again, we have continued utilizing the mechanisms that we have used really for the past 2 years now almost, that we have been in the pandemic. So we have staff letters that go out on Mondays. Those come from Dr. Finch as he communicates the most pertinent information to our staff. Again, those letters contain information related to COVID-19, but Dr. Finch also includes information that is related to other topics. And so whether that is related to PLC or calendar changes, et cetera, that's a way for us to keep our staff well informed. Staff memos is another way. The memos usually come from Jenna and myself. And so those most typically are related to COVID, and so it may have some specific guidance item that we have, but those have been sent out, and I would expect those to continue, especially in the next month as we experience some challenges with COVID-19. Our fireside chat, we had one, I believe, Dr. Gallagher, December 14th, maybe, something like that. I think it was around there, thank you. Where we talked about the changes that we were putting in place in terms of and we will have our Communication Council Fireside Chat. Our next one, I believe, is in February. And then our administrative briefings. That is always for our campus administrators. Sometimes those include additional folks, whether that be our additional members of the front office staff, including our nurses. Most recently, we had one at Friday, and we briefed folks on the changes that we were looking at from CDC and our other public health agencies. And so we will get in front of them, I believe, this Thursday. We're in front of them for about an hour where Jenna and I will provide them some additional guidance based off of any changes that come in this week. So we will continue that. We know they appreciate that. We always record these briefings so that for those administrators who may be subbing into a classroom or needing to handle a different situation, that they can view those later on in the day at a time that they are available to do so. Okay, this next slide is a slide that we included because we know in 2 prior board meetings, there was a request to have some additional information about other aspects of school safety. And so we wanted to make sure that the community was aware that there is a website, and it's printed there. And on that website, a community member can go and can look up information for any public school that is in the state of Arizona. And so we put a couple of items that are located or contained in this report, but there are many more than are just listed here. And so families could go and they could see information about enrollment and achievement. But we know that the folks who came before were asking more about some of the items such as suspension, if there were any particular types of incidents that are occurring on campuses. And so folks can find some of that information on that particular website. Okay, that was a lot of talking. And so I will pass it off to Ms. Jenna to highlight some additional items from Human Resources. Jenna.
I don't think your microphone's working. Jenna, he's got a mic for you.
Good. Test. Ah.
Much better.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. All right. Well, Gary, thank you. You was quite thorough in providing context. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time sharing with you updates regarding vaccine mandates. So previous to the holiday break, the board, I know, is aware that we were preparing for the collection of vaccination status for our Head Start employees as required by the Head Start office. Over the holiday break, actually as effective January 2nd, the Sunday prior to coming back, states joined together similarly to how they joined together to put a stay on the emergency temporary standard from OSHA. And so the vaccine mandate that we believed at that time that was going to need to be effective for us on January 31st is under a stay. So we are paused on that, and that's the second bullet. As far as the emergency standard under OSHA, it was under stay when we went into the holiday break, and then it was lifted during the holiday break. And then during that time, the next step, or after it was lifted, the next step would be to be heard in front of the Supreme Court, and that is where it is currently. So once we learn what the Supreme Court does with that particular standard, then we will know what to do. But we are also being told that if they do indeed enforce it, that we will have another period of time that we will wait because Arizona will be required to interpret that standard and provide us with directions on what to do. In the meantime, Gary and I have been working together. We did meet with a vendor for the weekly testing requirement just in case. If this were to go through, we are preparing for that. And so we have found a vendor that is agreeable to support us and provide that weekly testing. The more difficult part is, of course, going to be collecting that type of information on a weekly basis and making sure that we are accurate in collecting that information. And then as far as the changes with isolation and quarantine that the CDC has made and Maricopa has adopted. Gary did a nice job going over those. Just a quick overview for employees. It's easy to remember the 5 and 5 guidance. It is 5 days of quarantine, 5 days masked, or 5 days of isolation, 5 days masked. Of course, quarantine has to do with close contact, while isolation has to do with illness. There are options, however, for some employees or up-to-date vaccinated employees. There's a provision under CDC in Maricopa for those employees to return to work and maintain and keep masked for those 10 days. So the guidance that we are providing employees and communicating to supervisors often includes both a period of time that they are going to be away from work and a period of time that they need to remain masked when they do come back to work. We also want to make sure that our employees remember to continue to report. We think they are remembering because our volume is high at this period of time, but we do want them to remember that close contact and illness, they should go to covidreport.dvusd.org, and someone from Human Resources will reach right back out to them. We did send an email out, though, to our staff today, letting them know that the high volume has caused us to be a little bit slower in response, but we will get to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. And with that, President O'Brien, that concludes the Safe and Healthy Schools report, and we would be happy to entertain questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zerbach and Mrs. Moffett. Questions from board members? Mrs. Fisher?
I just have a couple. On slide 5, it says probable COVID cases. Are they not being tracked through the county, or, I mean, what do we mean by probable? We just have somebody who's not feeling well and we're calling it COVID? It says
You asked about this
confirmed
slide?
and probable. Yes.
This slide comes from directly from Maricopa County in terms of how they do it. And so they do have their confirmations from the vendors who do that. And they also take cases from doctors' health clinics, which are many times the home test kits. And so that's why they include that language as well.
Okay. And then the only other question I have, and it's around slide 9, but, and I'm not sure if Jenna clarified it or not. When we talk about our employees coming back with symptoms, I am several weeks past cleared from my second round of COVID, past all the quarantining, past testing clean and everything. However, my symptoms of instability, shakes, exhaustion, that remains. And according to my physician, it may remain for many months. And I'm back at work. I'm slower. I'm working a little more from home and taking more breaks. Are we going to be, I don't want to say sympathetic, but understanding of our employees that this is, my first round, I was done and I was great. This round, it's been weeks and I still shake, can barely walk, and fairly weak, but I'm mentally still able to do my job. Are we taking into consideration that this latest whatever version has long-term effects long after you're no longer contagious and no longer ill?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, yes, previously and now, our guidance allows us to bring our employees back when their symptoms improve, or how you might read it now is symptoms are resolving. You know you are improving and you have had no fever in 24 hours. In the olden days, under other illnesses, we all know that a cold or a flu, that you could cough for 30 days, well, for a very long time past that illness, and you are no longer contagious. We know that that is true now. And another question that we're often getting is, do I need a negative test before I return? And we believe that that's because it's a common conversation in the media right now. And it is under consideration, or at least there were articles, I think, last week from Dr. Fauci regarding test to return types of options. What we've always been told up to this point in time is that someone can test positive for COVID well past their contagious timeline. So they are maintaining the 10 days. They actually believe that you are most contagious 48 hours prior to presenting symptoms and 2 to 3 days after you've started your symptoms, and that's why they stop at the 5th day, the 5 and 5. But if your symptoms are not resolving and you have a fever for 24 hours, then you need to extend that timeline into the 10. And if you remember previously, we had a 10 and 20. Some people have COVID that lasts past the 10, and so we make those adjustments too. But we do bring them back after 5 days if symptoms are resolving, no fever, and they will wear a mask for 5 additional days to equal the previous 10.
Okay, so fever is kind of our key. Understanding that the symptoms could
And
be.
symptoms resolving.
Okay.
People will not have a fever but still feel very ill and not able to work, but never got a temperature.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Ordway?
Sorry. Okay, great report, lots of information, and I think that's going to be helpful as, again, we get to the changes it can change every hour or two, whatever. So if a parent chooses to have their student quarantine, I don't know who I'm looking at, but I'm looking at somebody, at home, how are we treating those absences?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, so if a student is exposed to someone who is positive for COVID-19 and is a close contact, and they report it to us, then provided that the child can continue with their assignments through Canvas, then that student is what's called distance learning present for us. If that child is unable to participate via Canvas, then that child would be marked ill and not present. But for the majority of our cases, they are able to participate, and so they would be distance learning present.
Okay. And you did kind of touch over what the inventory is for the masks that we have now. When you say we have enough for our employees to take tests, I don't know what enough means.
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, so when I say enough, we have a sufficient supply at this time for the immediate foreseeable future, I'll call it that. So the next several weeks, when we know we are likely to continue in the surge, to provide tests to employees who display symptoms. So if they're symptomatic, we are able to give them a test, whether that would be at the campus site for convenience in terms of driving. Mrs. Moffitt and her team, they will direct that employee as to where to get that test. And we also have enough tests to do the testing on the close contact 5-day provision for those staff members as well.
Yeah, that was, I don't know if it was luck or foresight, but those tests are really hard to come by, and it's just difficult to say, oh, I can't get a test, so what do I do? I think I'm positive, but I don't know, so I'm glad that we have those available.
We do have those, again, for the immediate foreseeable future, I'll describe it.
And then we have a pretty good process for our, I'm going to assume the nurses are in charge of the inventory of tests. We have a good process, especially now with knowing that we have nurses that are out to make sure that the campus sites have the tests.
Yes, ma'am. I will credit Jackie Duarte for that, our lead nurse. She runs a tight ship with respect to this, and so they do have their processes for that.
And then, are we still supplying masks for staff and students if they would want them? I see you're shaking your head, yes, Heather?
Yes, President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, the answer to that is yes.
Okay, and then, okay, just wondering what happened to the county supplying us personnel to do that contact tracing. Oh, are you wondering that too?
Are you asking for a response?
Oh,
'Cause
I do.
okay,
I
okay,
do
all
want
right.
a response because I need to have a response on the record.
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, that has been a difficult endeavor to get folks from county to do that job. They have not been successful in securing enough folks to distribute throughout the county. They do have a new program, I will tell you, Ms. Ordway, that is less based on volunteers now, that they're hoping to have a paid force. And so that is a newer program that they have. And so Mrs. Duarte and I actually discussed this particular program that they talked about in detail last Thursday. And we are exploring to see if there is a greater supply of individuals from the county that could help through that particular program. But through the volunteer one, there was not a supply from county.
Okay, and I don't know if this is a necessary, I appreciate that, a necessary piece of information, but do we track or know of hospitalizations of staff or students that are due to COVID?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway. So in terms of an official spreadsheet, if you will, for students, the answer is no for that. Do we certainly hear through our communication channels, which I've described many times at length as far as how we communicate through our district for COVID? Yes, we will hear from a principal if that happens, but we do not have a spreadsheet or a report, if you will, that formally tracks that. As far as the staff, Jenna, I don't know if you want to. I would imagine it's similar for that in terms of you hear from the staff member because you are in contact with them as far as when they can return. But do you want to add in anything if you have a formal sheet to that?
No, we have no centralized location where we would be capable of running a report like that. If an employee is hospitalized, though, and it prevents them from being at work, of course, we do know about that. If an employee were to visit the hospital over the weekend due to COVID, we may or may not know about that. That would be up to them to disclose to us.
Okay, and then just, thank you very much. You guys are very thorough with the information that is not up to date. Your crystal balls are pretty clear so far. And I did want to ask if you were aware that WestMec is now requiring masks, and if we have disseminated that information to our students, or do they do that?
Thank you, Ms. Ordway, for that. I will need to check with WestMec and see how they have communicated that information, and then we can respond as needed.
Yeah, because that was one of the reasons I asked if we to the students to make sure that our WestMec kids have them if they need them.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. Just quickly, Dr. Zerbach, could you go over the quarantine guidelines for close contacts within your home? I was looking through some social media posts, and it seems like there's some miscommunication that's floating around between different campuses. From what I understand, if someone in your home tests positive for COVID-19, the remaining students are supposed to quarantine. Is that correct?
Certainly, President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, I can address that. That is a particular situation that has some differences for that. So and I'll just highlight the difference in your question for the community. So is there a difference between how we provide guidance for students who are in close contact in the home versus a school exposure? And the answer is yes for that. So as we described in December, for school exposures, we have a quarantine optional policy moving forward, if you will, or as of January the 4th, for our kindergarten through 12th grade students. But for exposures in the home, which is Mrs. Reed's question, there is a difference. And so home exposures do have a quarantine requirement. And there is a difference there as well between those who are up-to-date vaccinated and those who are not. And so if a community member were to look at the CDC, ADHS, public health guidance, they will see that a home exposure vaccinated individual does not require a quarantine, whereas an unvaccinated student does require the quarantine for the 5 days. Now, there are mask and testing pieces that, again, I would like to highlight that could be revised for those students that are in that situation during the full 10-day protocol. Those are the provisions that have seen changes in the past 72 hours. And so the community will need to stay on top of that as far as how our changes occur and be able to read our updates on the safety plan as far as how that will be treated. But yes, there is a difference there, Ms. Reed.
Thank you. And for those students, the siblings of the COVID positive student, when we have a required quarantine for them, those absences do not count against them, correct?
Correct. Those students would be marked as distance learning present, provided they are continuing with their studies via Canvas, or if they are continuing with their studies via another way that that classroom is utilizing. We do have some situations, it's a minority of situations, where they possibly are doing some Zoom instruction, but at a minimum, if they're utilizing the Canvas, then that would be distance learning present.
Thank you.
Did you have another question? Or okay, Mrs. Fisher.
Just a couple of follow-ups based on other questions. Whatever tracing is occurring regarding our staff and our students, I want to assure that we have solid protocols in place to protect their privacy. And are those being followed and communicated to administration across the district? I know an HR benefits person would be aware of the HIPAA requirements, but all of our students and our employees deserve the confidentiality of their medical information. Are we taking those steps to ensure that is being followed?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, yes.
Okay. And then the other one, and I don't know if you can give clarity or not, because so far we have yet to get it. We're talking about quarantining of vaccinated versus unvaccinated differently.
In cases of home exposure,
Is it just home exposure?
correct.
Because what we're seeing is that people are vaccinated status really is irrelevant when it comes to whether or not you pass it and whether or not you get it, and or get it multiple times. So I just want to make sure that we are not treating our students or staff differently in a way that would force them to feel pressure to accept a vaccination that they do not agree with.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
I just have one clarifying question. When we were talking about doing the testing, we're not requiring a negative test to come back, correct? For staff? No. Dr. Zerbach?
Well, are you asking President O'Brien for an isolation or a close contact? Or are you asking for both?
I'll take an answer to both.
Okay, Jenna, do you want to, because there are differences, so I'll let Jenna start and then I'll finish.
So if an employee is positive, we do not require them to test again to return. Symptoms need to resolve and they need to be fever-free for 24 hours. Someone that is in quarantine, however, they will need to test after 5 days post their last exposure. So on the 6th day, they will need to test and receive a negative test before they can return from that quarantine.
Okay.
And then for students, again, Mrs. O'Brien, this is one that is, I'm going to call it to be determined. And so we are waiting to hear exactly what Maricopa County decides to this. And if you will, again, I would just add a layer for the students, which is not the same layer for the staff, is going to be the test supply as far as where we ultimately finalize that.
Okay, thank you for that. Those clarifications, I should say. Do appreciate the comprehensive report this evening, especially given, as usual, all the moving parts plus some extra ones this recent holiday break. So thank
You are
you
welcome.
again for,
Yeah.
for keeping
You are
all those
welcome.
balls juggling.
And I would
All
like
right.
to thank again, President O'Brien, purposely very much our campus staff for their hard work over the past week. They are truly doing a fantastic job, so hats off to them.
And that's a good reminder, Dr. Zerbach. I swear every time we talk about this or get a little farther down the road, and I think that our staff couldn't possibly be working any harder. They continue to step up to what are more and more difficult challenges as things continue to be an ever-changing climate. And I was on my email on Sunday, and there was staff members who were resolving parent emails and phone calls regarding COVID cases for their children on Sunday. So yes, incredible, huge kudos, thank you, thank yous to all of our staff across the district who are taking care of our kids and each other. So thank you. All right, our next agenda item is public call to the public.
All to the public. Then we have one public speaker, Myung Covert. While you walk up there, I will tell you that the board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, topic, hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
Please state your name for the record and then your time will begin.
Young Covert.
I think you're gonna have to take a step closer to the microphone so we can make sure we can hear you.
I don't think it's working. Is it working now? Okay. So did you hear me? Young Covert. Okay. So I'm here tonight as a voice of representing the voice of all the parents who are dedicated and hardworking in Deer Valley Unified School District. We are here supporting Dr. Curtis Finch as superintendent. I was on the committee to hire Dr. Finch a few years ago. Regrettably, the incredible superintendent before him, Dr. James Beintheimer, who I was also on the hiring committee, and we elected him and brought him all the way from Dallas, Texas. And we were so excited. We thought that he would be here for a very long time, but regrettably, due to situations and circumstances, left Deer Valley Unified School District. And then so the search committee had to go back into service again. And I was thinking, how can we find another superintendent that will replace Dr. James Beintheimer? He had started so many incredible initiatives, had brought the district together even more, and continued the work of Dr. Virginia McEllier. So when Dr. Finch came, we were so elated that he would be such an incredible individual to carry on what Dr. Beintheimer had started and bring his own incredible vision and all the work experiences that he had in Michigan. And you know what? We the parents, the dedicated, the hardworking parents in Deer Valley Unified School District, have been so incredibly pleased with Dr. Beintheimer. I am out in the marketplace. I work out in the marketplace. I am around so many so-called leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, there are very few effective leaders out in the marketplace. We all know that. Dr. Beintheimer and Dr. Finch are one of the very few actual leaders that I can say is a leader. and I can speak from my own experience out in the professional realm. You talk to custodians, you talk to secretaries, you talk to principals, and you talk to teachers. It's unanimous. Dr. Finch, across the board, is very well embraced. Dr. Wattenheimer, he has the respect. So I'm here to say that governing board members, you have to work together, and you have to ensure that Dr. Finch stays. Dr. Finch will leave on his own accord, not because of certain board members and their agenda. Governing board members are elected to serve, to unify. And the mission statement is through effective policy and decision making to lead and empower DVUSD to provide and continuously improve upon a world-class educational system that prepares our students to successfully compete. We're here to support Dr. Finch. And governing board members, as election comes along, we have to elect governing board members that will also further along the system. Mr. Finch, Dr. Finch will leave on his own accord, not like Dr. Weitenheimer when he had to leave because of situations. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we will move on to consent agenda.
Yeah, I would ask that the governing board approve consent agenda items through 6O.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously while we record our
Move to
electronic
7A.
votes. Everybody able to, okay, please go to 7A.
All right, so I would ask that the governing board approve employee professional development.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing,
Aye's fine.
I'm sorry, what?
Mine was an aye. I just don't know if it came through.
Okay, I appreciate that. Hearing no nays, the motion passes unanimously, and there's my electronic vote.
Are we done with it? Okay, so we can move to 7B, which is I would ask the governing board to approve agenda pre-approvals.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously as we wait for technology. There we go. And we have a preview item this evening. It is high school math adoption resources. And so we will go to Dr. Galligan for that presentation. Yeah, Gary's works well.
I think we're ready. President O'Brien, members of the board, Finch, tonight we will share a preview of our 9-12 Math Adoption Committee's recommendation for the high school mathematics resources and materials beginning next school year, 22-23. Courtney Reyes is our 7-12 mathematics CIS, and she is here to support this presentation. Our committee was made up of teachers and parents across the district that represented the general education, special education, and gifted education perspectives and students. This adoption process started last September, as you can see here, and concluded in December. You'll notice that there is a 4.5 that happened in November, and we were able to take each of the materials that were on public review and do a very short mini pilot in some of our schools so that we could get a better feel for each of the resources that were put forward in our public review. With our digital math licenses expiring at the end of the 21-22 school year, there has been a need for a current and updated math materials that align to the Arizona mathematics standards, along with our shift for standards based on grading and instructional practices. The team completed a thorough evaluation of the materials submitted by the various vendors, looking at the alignment to the standards as well as the support of curricular planning, instruction, assessment, technology integration, and professional development. You can see that our last adoption was in the 2016-17 school year. The committee recommends for our primary resource, it's an open education resource for our primary resource, and that is Open Up High School Mathematics. It's authored by Mathematics Vision Project and published by Open Up Resources. Open Up High School Mathematics is rated high on Ed Reports, which is an independent nonprofit that reviews K-12 curricula for standards, alignment, and quality. During the public review, teacher feedback emphasized the student and teacher-friendly environment and collaborative instructional routines. The lesson design and feel of this resource is fairly exciting, moving to support instruction in our effort to engage high school students in their learning and prepare them with the knowledge and tools necessary for their future education in post-secondary. In addition, 96 students surveyed after participating in the mini pilot reported that they liked Open Up and felt it was student-friendly, engaging, with just enough hands-on to be fun at the high school level. We wanted to drop this quote in here because it truly is a different in mindset for mathematics. That mathematics is not just about numbers, equations, computation, and algorithms. It truly is about understanding how mathematics work in our lives. What you can see here are a description of those materials, and I'm just going to pull out a couple of things in each of those three bullets. The first bullet talks about the resource is structured around the 5 practices for orchestrating mathematics discussion, and I wanted just to share that that is a framework that really works to build student discourse around mathematics problems and mathematics itself so that they better understand the math they're learning. And the second one, it just describes that Open Up High School Mathematics is built upon also the comprehensive mathematics instruction framework. And that framework is just a balance of teaching and strategies so that students are prepared for the 21st century workforce and have a fairly strong confidence in their ability to use mathematics in the real world. And that's that third bullet, is there are plenty of real-world connections that occur regularly throughout instruction in this resource that makes that connection to what I'm learning applies to what I will be doing once I graduate. The committee also recommends Math Excel as a supplemental resource. Pearson Math Excel is an online tool for teachers and students that provides an added layer of support for personalized instruction and practice. Teachers can easily create, edit, and assign homework and tests. So this really does work to be a supplement to Open Up for that homework support. During public review, teacher feedback emphasized the student and teacher environment once again, access to multiple question types, customization that they can use based on the work that's going on in the classroom, and that Math Excel is used in our upper level courses and some colleges as well. In addition, those high school students surveyed after participating in that mini pilot reported that they liked Math Excel, felt it was engaging, had step-to-step examples for support, had easy-to-use math tools, and that it is the same platform that they will use in level math courses. So this quote, the only way to learn mathematics is to do mathematics, is another one that we felt was very important in the choices that the team made. The power of Math Excel is that students have an opportunity to interact with the math problems online and then be provided immediate real-time feedback so that they can make adjustments in their learning. When they get back to class, use that adjustment and learning to further improve their skill set. The math courses that we already have Math Excel in include college algebra, college math, pre-calculus, prob and stats, and financial math. We've had Math Excel, I would say, Courtney, for the last 4 years, 5 years. If approved, professional development will begin in the spring of this year for returning teachers. Additional sessions will be held over summer, just as we typically do, and closer to the start of the school year for our new teachers and those teachers changing grade levels. If approved in February, we will submit a materials order with the expected delivery date sometime in March. As you know, when we go through textbook adoptions, we really try to complete those prior to the end of the year so teachers have access to those resources during the summer and prior to the next school year. Professional development will be delivered this upcoming spring and summer for all teachers of Algebra 1-2, Geometry, Algebra 3-4, and the resources will be fully implemented beginning in the 22-23 school year. This is the slide that you all are always most interested in. The resources presented align with, as I said, the Arizona Mathematics Standards for those 3 courses. Over 9,000 students in grades 9 through 11 will benefit from these math resources that integrate digital, in-person, and hands-on components. The high school mathematics adoption you can see here with the Open Up Math, the Math Excel. There are manipulatives that we will bring in to high school math that will support both the Open Up Math and Math Excel. So the total for those 3 areas comes to just under $694,000. And this is within the curricular adoption budget for this school year. We will bring this topic back to you as an action item at the January 25th board meeting. Thank you.
Are there any questions, members? Mrs. Fisher?
As always, my same 2 standard questions. What correspondence was sent out to the parents and community for review? And what feedback have we received from the community? Have we sought a surveyor, or not just the committee, but the community of the children who will be utilizing these materials?
So as is typical now, information goes out through our social media outlets, so Facebook, Twitter, and our website. We also send information out through our actual teachers to get out to our families through their own communication cycles. I believe we had 10 community members who submitted feedback. We had another 20 educators? 20 teachers who gave us feedback, and then over 100 students. One of the things Courtney did this year that I think we're going to do from now on is she was able to survey students who used the different resources that we had out on public review for that during that pilot. And the students gave us pretty clear feedback on their preferences and what they liked and what they didn't like. But as is typical, we will now, based on the requirements of the board 2 years ago, make sure that everything goes out by social media and that our teachers send information out. Courtney, would you add anything?
So of the 10 people who responded in the public review, there were 6 additional teachers and 4 community members who reviewed on the 4 categories and rated Open Up Math as superior over the other resources, and then the same thing for Math Excel.
Did we stop sending out text and email notifications to parents to review things like this? And are we 100% using social media?
We send out through our teachers who use their own connections with parents information.
And are all teachers required, when you send it to them, they're required to send it to their parents?
We ask them to send it out, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Reed?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Ordway?
I think it's awesome that the students actually had an opportunity to weigh in on it. And about, this also will have a good component for online. I see you shaking your head. Go ahead and please just throw throw in the online portion of it.
Yes, so Math Excel is a digital component, so it can be used online. It is compatible with iPads and Chromebooks. Um, for Open Up Math, it's a website, so it's an open education resources that they have access to. And there's also an integration with our LMS of Canvas.
Thank you.
When the students provided feedback that were part of the 4.5 section, uh, were there questions that asked them to compare it to the math that they're using now?
So the questions that were asked were more note-based and justification based off and I'm pulling up the,
You know, Courtney, if you could, maybe in Friday's update, we could just see the questions that you asked the students in their survey?
yes.
Okay, that would be great. And if it's not too cumbersome to provide, would love to see their feedback, if that's not too big of a ask.
Nope, we
Great.
can do that.
Was the curriculum we're using now considered as part of this curriculum adoption when we started way back in the beginning?
So all vendors had the opportunity to put forward their resource, and Courtney can share with you the ones that we went through. But for the most part, the committee and then the feedback that we received through the vendor presentations limited the choices that we made. And Courtney, would you just share what we had, the vendor presentations we had?
Yes, so for the primary resource, we looked at open education resources, and it was Illustrator Math, Open Up, and eMath. And then for the supplemental resource, it was Alex, Math Excel, Kitum, and Mathia.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We will see this again in 2 weeks at our next meeting. So if there are additional questions regarding math adoption, please forward them to Dr. Finch so that we can get them answered for you prior to the next meeting. Okay, we have a discussion item this evening, and that will be staff communications with students, and we'll have Mr. Warner join us for this item. Thank you, Mr. Warner. So to provide some background, the governing board decided to have a review of social media or contact between students and staff and communications. And we had an internal investigation with the assistance of independent legal counsel. And Mr. Warner provided us with some recommendations, and we're here to discuss those this evening.
So I have 6 recommendations based on that investigation. Did you want me to read them to you? Is that would be
You
easiest to
could
have?
summarize them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my first and primary recommendation was to remove communication with students from our electronic user agreement. It sort of feels like it's hidden in there somewhere, and make it a standalone document that is reviewed by every employee every year. And so that was my first recommendation. Another thing that came out is it really need to provide some training for our employees for the different alternative ways they can communicate with students. We have several different ways to communicate that are non-peer-like, that is in groups and things like that. So we want to make sure that all of our employees, including non-traditional employees like assistant coaches and things like that, have access to that sort of training to communicate with students. We want to make sure that we provide some resources and training for our students especially at the high school level, about what is improper communication from adults. And I think that we had some issue with some kids being confused about what was proper and what was not proper, and we just need to make sure that we do some sort of work with our students to have them understand what's proper and what's not proper, when to talk to a trusted adult, and those sorts of things. And so I think that's a process that we would need to do. In addition to that, I think that we would benefit from an anonymous reporting application of some sort where kids could make that report if they see stuff on social media that's inappropriate, or any of those, or receive messages that are inappropriate or things of that nature. We could have them reported to us anonymously. I suggest we aggressively discipline employees who do not abide by our communication agreement, even if the communications are benign. So we need to make sure that we remove from our culture this idea that we can talk to our students like they are peers, even if it's just about changing practice time or changing an assignment or something of that nature. I think that it's important that we have a number of employees who are active on social, and I think it's important for us to pay attention to social media accounts as best we can. I mean, it's out there, it's free speech, but we need to make sure that we're being represented in a way that's effective for us as a district. Some of our employees will identify themselves as district employees and then use their accounts maybe inappropriately, in a way that we wouldn't want a district employee to be using their accounts. So it's important for us to sort of monitor that activity as best we can. And then the final recommendation is, I would suggest that we convene a work team to study these recommendations, take a look at them, and see if there's any other things that maybe we can come out of that there might be other recommendations to assist us as we try to get to what is the right spot for our communications with students and social media and whatnot in our ever-changing technology world.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Do we have any questions, Mrs. Ordway?
Well, thank you for your recommendations. What would you think the best makeup for a work team would be?
All the stakeholders. So I would make sure students are part of that. I would want teachers to be part of that, coaches to be part of it, administrators, members of the community, mostly probably parents would be where we would like to make that part of it. But I would really like to see all the stakeholders come together. We have all different points of view about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and what we can do about it, and what we should do about it, what maybe we shouldn't do about it. So I think that the more varied voices we have at the table, the better off we are.
Would you consider experts in law enforcement in that area of law enforcement would be helpful?
I think it may be helpful. I think that what we're getting at is less law enforcement related and more internal communication related in terms of how we interact with kids. I think the law enforcement angle is helpful to us in regards to the resources they can bring in training kids or talking to kids about what is appropriate conversations and what are not appropriate conversations, and what they can do if they find themselves in an inappropriate conversation or relationship. That's certainly a perspective that law enforcement can bring.
Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher?
When I look at the recommendations, I focus in on number 4. We talk a lot about aggressive discipline. However, in the last year, we have had 2 instances where we have allowed resignations when there should have been immediate termination. This is the one area that I believe that we should have a zero tolerance policy. You do not mess with children, period, no matter what. And I do not believe that this district has a zero tolerance policy when it comes to protecting our children. So while I support everything that you have here, I do. This is a very difficult thing for us to address. I believe we need to additionally consider when a viable complaint has been made with adequate evidence to report that we immediately proceed to the termination process. Because a resignation, no matter how you slice it, protects that individual's future employment, or potentially protects it. And I think our responsibility is not to protect their future employment, but is to protect the children and any future children that that individual will be in contact with. That's my stay on the whole thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Reed?
I don't have anything to add at this time.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank you for the comprehensive work that you did on this and providing these recommendations. I think that these recommendations are all very good and necessary steps. I do want to highlight in number 3, you talk about the recommendation is to provide resources and training for students that identifies improper communication from adults and instructions on how to avoid it. And you also talk about potentially an anonymous reporting application. I would encourage that we have an anonymous reporting applications for staff members to report. I think that unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't really know that there's a good adverb for that, but the truth is some of our fellow staff members are going to know best and see it, and there needs to be a way for them to report it without any kind of retaliation against them. I agree with that we be very aggressive. I agree with you that our discipline policy needs to be very aggressive, and even benign conversation must have some kind of discipline that. And I went to school in a day when, my teacher gave me a ride home from school in her car. So, and that was okay. My parents were good with that. They knew that. And we've unfortunately are at a time and place where that is no longer acceptable and okay. I realize I just dated myself by several decades by sharing that story. But it is important for our staff members, all staff members, as you pointed out, our assistant coaches, our coaches who are not necessarily teachers, whomever it is, to understand that we don't live in a day and age anymore where that conversation can be benign with our students. It needs to be professional, and it needs to be done in a place that we can have a record of it, so that and I say that so that it protects the employee as much as it will protect the students. We've dealt with in this district a situation where indeed the teacher was innocent, and so I think we have great employees and we have great students, but unfortunately there are folks out who do bad things. And we need to make sure we're protecting all of our people from these kinds of situations. I do know that what we're asking is for us to do more work. Is everything? Did you want to say something, Dr. Zerbach? Okay. And so I think it will be important to see what kind of additional resources might be necessary, whether that is dollars for software. I don't know if it will be dollars for people, if we need additional monitoring sources. So I do want to see, I see in number 6 that the idea would be for you all to convene a work team in January and produce a report in May so that we can look at that. But along with that, I hope we will see what kind of resources, because I want to make sure that we have and provide to you all what you need to implement this and follow it. Dr. Zerbach?
Thank you, President O'Brien. I just wanted to add as a clarifying comment for our community, as I know the board is already aware, that when Mr. Warner talks about an anonymous method in terms of sharing this information, and maybe Mr. Warner, you want to comment on this. We currently do have a way for folks to do that with our Safe Schools. What Mr. Warner is talking about for the community is perhaps it has been suggested that an app is an even more used way for folks in order to communicate now. And so that's something that we're looking at. But Mr. Warner, maybe you want to just comment again on
Sure, thanks.
the hotline.
Thanks, Dr. Z. Yeah, we do have a Safe Schools hotline that we monitor. We have a Answer Now phone that we, of course, answer when they call. But one of the things that we've kicked around is the idea of having an app that they can install on their device so that we sort of meet kids where they live in regards to being able to report something immediately that's going on. So that's really, the issue for us really, and I think, Ms. O'Brien, you hit it on the head, the technology is running out ahead of us. And so we have to run with it. And with the communication, the way we've communicated with kids up until this point, we have not run with the technology. So we really need to start doing that, I think, more effectively. We have the majority of our teachers have found ways to communicate with kids that is not peer-like. It's in a way that they can discuss things with kids as a group. We need to make sure that all of our employees are doing that sort of thing. And so that's really where we want to make sure that we can make that happen. But as Dr. Z was saying, that we have ways that people can report things anonymously, but kids struggle with the telephone for whatever reason. So we want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to send us that alert.
That is a very excellent point, Dr. Zerbach and Mr. Warner, that, yes, bless you, that we do want to meet the kids where they're at and also provide opportunities. In this day and age, generally speaking, if you take a screenshot of something, there's not a way to send that anonymously. I guess you could make a print copy and stick it in an envelope, but if they're not going to pick up the phone, they sure as heck aren't going to put a stamp on a letter and stick it in the mail. So I do appreciate you being innovative and finding those opportunities to meet our kids and many of our young staff where they're at. Dr. Finch.
I'll just add or reemphasize a couple things. One is there is technology available that monitors technology, and that is called BARC. And it's very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for a system our size. The good news is they're on the front end of developing their company, and they have been using us as a petri dish, and it has worked effectively for us. The problem is super duper expensive. The second thing is people. You mentioned that. I envision, since we have coaches flipping over, teachers flipping over time, yes, we do need people probably to do more monitoring, but I was thinking more on the training side. If we could make videos and things that are required that each employee has to view, et cetera, that kind of approach keeps it current and keeps it available 24/7. We could do videos for students, we could do them for teachers, we could do them for administrators, coaches, et cetera. So that takes time and resources, and so I also charge the committee. I think that's the trail you need to go down, and to think about, obviously, safety is number one. So you worry about the safety side, we'll worry about the dollar side. So tell us what we can get for what, and then the board will decide how far they want to go and to put a net around the district. So thanks.
Anything else? Mrs. Fisher?
I do want to make one thing. I don't speak for the whole board, I only speak for myself. But I want our employees to understand that we are aware that we're catching bad apples. It is not all of our staff. We have wonderful staff, and we have teachers who at times will try and do the best thing they can for a student, not realizing the optics of the situation. And those are the individuals that we can catch with training and things like that so that they're aware. But regardless, it's every district, it's every school, and it's through the ages. There are a few bad apples that we're catching. And it's important that we are all aware that, at least I don't know about the rest of the board, I'm sure they believe the same, but we do not believe that our employees in general are inappropriate with our kids, other than, like I said, the few bad apples. And it's unfortunate, but we must do whatever we can to catch them, because they can do a lot of damage through the years before they get caught. So I just don't want our employees to think that we're, I don't know, against them, because that's not what this is about. This is about protecting kids.
Absolutely. So thank you again, Mr. Warner, for your work on this. We do appreciate that. We look forward to getting, hopefully we don't have to wait all the way till May. Maybe we can get a mini update in between now and then on progress. With that, we will go to governing board reports. Mrs. Fisher? Mrs. Reed?
I don't have a report tonight.
Okay. Mrs. Ordway?
So it's the new year, we're back. Some of us are sick, some of us are well, but we're all trying our best. So that, for me, I think this last 2 years, but certainly this school year, dedication, collaboration, and innovation by all members of our school community, students, staff, parents, caregivers, sponsors, anyone that has anything to do with us. They've all looked out of the box to see how we can help, even though we can't be on a campus. Marie sits back there all quiet, doesn't want any kind of exposure, I guess, but the Deer Valley education is so entwined and intertwined with our students in so many different ways. Just the food that we were able to purchase with the Albertson Safeway cards was incredible. And then she found out, at the last minute, that you had to use them by December 31st. So that was an interesting way to get all of those cards out. But what I ended up having the opportunity to do was to fill up another 4 boxes of food. So when the families came back at the beginning of this break, they had another month of food. So thank you very much, Marie, for being that great conduit that allows us to be the conduit. That's just a small thing. So at the Interfaith Council Zoom meeting, we learned of a beautiful, timely resource called CityServe. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but basically it's our large box stores that normally would have to, or normally did not utilize these things that were returned that there was nothing wrong with. So Grand Canyon University has a great place where all of these things are stored. So what we needed to do is connect these resources from the storage house to the people that need them. So again, the Education Foundation is going to help with the logistics. We will supply them with families that are in need of maybe a refrigerator or whatever. And when we talk about helping our families, in addition to our families that are homeless, it is our families that we want to help, that 3 steps before you get there. So if you need something, you let somebody at your school know, whether it's the nurse or whomever your contact is. You don't have to be homeless to get help, because sometimes that large appliance, that refrigerator, is your last, it's your last step. So so to keep that in mind, a lot of us are paycheck to paycheck or almost, one step away from that. So I appreciate the the city serve. It was so awesome uh, to learn about that. And for us at the district, we supply them with the people that need what they need, and then again, logistics are taken care of, and we're helping our families, which helps our students. So it's a nice thing. We've got sports going on again. Middle school sports is going on, so that's exciting. I still would like to know if Jim and Dr. Finch are going to take us on an outside tour of the new school. I'm kidding. I know we're not allowed over there yet, but I do gaze at it from far away. And I think we're getting some steel, right? We're getting the steel. So we're on track for everything. I appreciate the board members that I'm working with. I appreciate the families. We are here for kids, and we're doing a great job. So we'll see how that works. And Ms. Mock, if you would like me to help you out in some way to get that aggregate number going, I've already sent my emails to the legislators. You let me know what else there is to do. Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher?
First, I want to welcome back our staff and our students. I hope you all were able to get some rest and enjoy your families in the holidays. I know that it's difficult for some and wonderful for others. Hopefully, you were able to at least get some good rest because it's a long haul. Prior to the break, I did attend the ASBA annual conference. I was very mindful this time of the reason I was attending. I did have a blast with the vendors as I generally do, but I took the opportunity to spend some time with some various superintendents that I have known through the years. And surprisingly, a couple of new ones came over and introduced themselves. It was wonderful to have discussions with them about what they're doing to connect back to their community so that parents are aware that districts need and want their input. So that was a very positive experience. I did also take the opportunity to speak with the new head of ASBA. Her name is, I just keep losing it for some reason, but I did take time to speak with her. And I have not seen a statement from ASBA saying that they condemn the comments of NSBA and the actions of NSBA. And I do want it to be clear that our parents are not terrorists. When they disagree with us, they disagree with us. And we must work with them. It is a privilege for us to have their children, and it is a privilege for them to choose us. I do hope that ASBA still considers coming out publicly and renouncing what happened with NSBA. There are districts that have left ASBA as a result. There are several others who are in discussions about that. I in no way believe that this current board would consider leaving ASBA, but from what I have heard throughout, I don't think it's an impossibility for future boards. And because of that, I do hope that we all are mindful of what that impact would be and that we prepare in the event that that does occur. There are many people in public education that value children and value the parents and truly want to partner for the benefit of children. And unfortunately, in this current political environment, there are also individuals that want to do everything in their power to dismantle our public education system. Everybody knows that I support parent choice. including charters and vouchers when appropriate. But I want it to be clear that the public school system, this public school district, can never go away. We have kids that do not have parents who will take those choices. And even the parents that do, there is so much that the public district offers for our students that others cannot. And it needs to be and remain a strong and protected system for our parent choice, because many parents will choose public schools. I attended public schools, private schools, charter schools. I think my parents spent thousands in some of my private schools. And I will tell you, if I could go back and ask them, my choice would have been for them to leave me in my public school where I was flourishing and I was happy. I was the youngest and they just wanted to give me opportunities. I would have had them in a public district. And I think parents need to know that, and they need to know that we can work to make sure that our public schools remain strong and a wonderful option for those kids that it fits. The last little blurb I have here, I just added because I wanted to provide a little bit of clarification. As long as I have been involved in the board district, I have seen several individuals or groups who love to provide misinformation. I don't know if they get misinformation and just share it on, or if it's the telephone game and that misinformation gets here and becomes something totally wild over there. But I do want to be clear. The only board members that did not value Dr. Weitenheimer were no longer on this board when he left. Dr. Weitenheimer did not have to leave this district. He was asked to stay. He was actually begged to stay. And he was, in fact, a very good superintendent. From the moment I took seat, I was asked repeatedly to fire him by one individual. Repeatedly. And repeatedly, I said, provide evidence he did anything wrong, and I will do it. It was never provided. Dr. Weitenheimer was a valuable superintendent for this district. He was a good man, whether anybody had issues here and there, whatever, but you dealt with him. You dealt with him, he dealt with you, but he did not have to leave. And the one board member who absolutely hated him was no the board when he chose to leave. He did not leave under any controversy. He had done nothing wrong and was a good superintendent. And I want to be clear that any conversation otherwise is misinformation. That's it for me.
Thank you, everyone. And I also would like to say Happy New Year and welcome back to the staff. I know that it has been a very difficult coming back, as Dr. Zerbach talked about. Numbers are high. Folks, staff, kids, parents, we're all feeling the hurt of the latest COVID variant. And so I hope people get healthy soon and will remain healthy, and do again, thank you all for the work you are doing. I know that we're probably in for, unfortunately, another roller coaster ride of COVID numbers as well as policy changes and guidelines. So I guess buckle up and hang on, because here we go again, unfortunately. I also attended the ASBA conference in December, where the members of the Arizona School Boards Association, which are the districts across the state, voted in finally we got a 2/3 majority vote to add an additional seat to the board, which now means that the Hispanic Native American Indian Caucus that was only represented by whichever member was the chair. So for 2 years, the chair might be Hispanic. The other 2 years, it would be Native American. So at any given time, there was only the president of that caucus. And so now we so choose both a representative from Native American as well as Hispanic will have a seat at the table. Always, it's been a very long time in coming to that, and so I'm very excited that the members across the state voted to support that bylaw change. There will be some additional events for the Arizona School Boards Association coming up, and I think we have some other fun things going on. I know we've received some emails regarding parent volunteers and visitors on campus. I know we're looking for an update to come regarding that, I believe in February or March. February, oh, got it right the first time. And with that, I will just say, stay healthy if you're healthy, get healthy if you're not feeling well, and look forward to the rest of this school year. Dr. Finch, your report?
Yes, I have finished. It's in the 98 percentile range. My 23rd annual State of the District. It will come out on the 14th in The Voice. So then they'll head out through newspapers and social media, et cetera. So be looking for that. Kind of a summary of our this past year, past calendar year, and where we're headed in 2022. Yes, you are correct. 22 is going to be another exciting one. I just want to again thank the staff. We had a PD on the 3rd, and basically our staff ran it. And so the feedback that we received, we were discussing in cabinet this week, very positive. And I always like that approach when our own staff are at the center of making that happen. So kudos to Dr. Chunas, Dr. Galligan. They were the main ones that, they were conductors with the batons, getting that all organized, and it turned out really well, and it was received really well. And I think I've mentioned before, I'll remind again, because for the community that's watching, that we continue to receive notifications from developers. That should not be news. We get those almost weekly now. Keeps Mr. Miglorino hopping, trying to find out where on the map that is. And obviously, what's happening keeps us in contact with the city of Phoenix and the state and the county on development, because obviously TSMC in our neighborhood is in the smack dead center of our district. Will have a major impact on us. It'll be Intel squared. If you can think Chandler, it's going to happen like that. And the difference will be it'll be twice as fast. So it's exciting, but it's bringing challenges to us daily. And many of my cabinet are involved in that as well, because it has a ripple effect. And Ms. Allred is our key contact with TSMC and keeping them in the loop on enrollment and schedules and students. And so that's going well. Last but not least, January is School Board Appreciation Month. We want to thank our school board members for the time that they spend dedicating to the district. As we know, they sacrifice family time. They have lots and lots of meetings. They obviously face criticism and praise, sometimes in the same sentence. Sometimes they miss anniversaries and birthdays and all that good stuff, and state championship games. And so we just want to thank them for their, we've missed some good ones. One time we actually canceled a board meeting for a state championship. We did that.
We did not cancel, we rescheduled.
Yeah, we rescheduled. So, but yeah, they seem to fall on Tuesday nights when all the state championships go. So, but just a little recap here of your board members that are currently serving. Ms. Ordway is now on the 1-3 mark, 13 years. Pretty amazing. She's completed 13 years. Ms. O'Brien is at the 8-year mark completed, and she actually won the ASBA Pillar Award just recently, which is one of their highest honors for participation and making a difference. Ms. Fisher has hit the 5-year mark And I think she probably gets a pin by now, right? I think, yeah. We don't have pins till 10. Would you get like half a pin at 5? What do you get at 20? We'll worry about that. Miss Wardway?
I was going to say, some of us will never find out.
Maybe get a new car or something. Miss Reed is at the 3-year mark, and Miss Paperman has just joined us. She's at the 1st-year mark. We do have DVUSD treats for you before you leave, and maybe you can divvy up the 2 that aren't here. You can decide rock, paper, scissors on the stuff you want. So, no, thanks again, Dr. Z, for piloting us through these difficult times. I used to have hair, so you're not far behind. I see yours turning gray. This is a good sign. You're going to be a future superintendent probably. So keep up the great work. And again, to our staff, thanks for all you do as we plow into 2022. Thank you.
All right, with that, I will entertain, first I should say future meetings and
Good.
dates to remember are posted, and then I should say I'll entertain a motion for.
Make a motion to end our governing board meeting at 9:06.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, motion is approved.